So, good morning everybody, and welcome to the launch of the Newhaven story. I'm Graham Peters. I'm the chairman of Team East Sussex and a vice chairman of the South East Local Enterprise Partnership, and more importantly this morning, I'm the chairman of the Newhaven Enterprise Zone Board. We meet at a very exciting time for Newhaven. The Enterprise Zone is really starting to make an impact. We've been allocated up to £25 million of Stronger Towns funding, and a really interesting bid is coming together for that. We've bid for future High Streets funding too. I also anticipate in the very near future an announcement about significant government funding through the Local Enterprise Partnership for one of Newhaven's most interesting buildings. All these things are coming together in a crescendo. Now is an extremely good time for Newhaven to tell its story, to weave a backdrop, bringing the town together with a common vision, and to drive forward a more exciting and prosperous future for Newhaven, its residents, and its businesses. We're here this morning to listen to the launch of that story after a great deal of preparatory work and consultation. Without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to the person who has been perhaps the principal driver of this work, but of course supported by her colleagues at Lewes District and Newhaven Town Councils and many others across the town, and of course Thinking Place. I'd like to hand you over to Corinne Day. Corinne.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for the launch of Newhaven's Place story. We have with us today our guest speakers who exemplify better than I can the power of a good and compelling story for a place. Many of you have been involved in different shapes and forms in bringing together our story, but for some of you this will be the first time you may have heard of it. I have been given the role of storyteller today, so I hope I can do it justice and reflect the enthusiasm, energy and originality of what we've been told. So with no further ado, please let me start. I didn't quite know where to start, so I'm going to start with once upon a time. Newhaven had a successful enterprise zone with many plans, interventions and projects underway. However, it was felt there was a missing piece to the jigsaw, something that joined it all together. We were missing a forward-looking and critically a shared view of what Newhaven could become, in essence, the Newhaven story. In my experience of working with different places over the years, I do feel very strongly that Newhaven's story needed to be led by the place and its people, and not by any organisation in particular, that it was something that people recognised and believed in. As programme director for the EZ, the power of this for me was that it would also provide a focus for attracting investment, funding, and for enticing good employers to Newhaven, whilst just as importantly instilling a much needed pride in our place. I had the good fortune to listen to Thinking Places director John Till at a conference last year. He talked about the power of a place and its story, and it resonated with my experience of Newhaven and that of others. Then the EZ commissioned Thinking Place to help facilitate this process of creating a place-based engagement process. We wanted to fire people's imaginations and to lead to Newhaven being able to tell its own story. What followed was a detailed review of existing research and consultation. Then we had an extensive round of engagement with wide and varied stakeholders and partners, locally and further afield, in different formats at different places and times to try and reach as many people as possible. What came next were the independent results of that work. They were so compelling and robust in its nature, but also so many people had said the same thing, that they believed in what Newhaven could become and had a shared view of that potential. Some things were harder to hear and will be harder to deliver, but nonetheless, the things that really mattered to people and that needed addressing were really very clear. Having listened to stakeholders in Newhaven, there are a number of things that need to be addressed via our existing programmes, but also that need to be linked in with the emerging funding opportunities that we're seeing. But we can now be clear on what's special about Newhaven and how we are different. Our story explains what we have to offer. It captures the spirit of the area and what will be put us on the map for all the right reasons. The words we use to represent this new thinking are not marketing slogans. I think that's really important, but instead help us to build a confidence in Newhaven, how we communicate collectively about Newhaven, and how we build and develop, and even the way we behave about our place. Importantly, the approach is both aspirational, but also based on a reality that can be experienced today. It will provide the missing thread that makes sense of what we are trying to do in our bids for funding, but also in our conversations with the community, creating a much needed confidence and optimism that good growth can happen for Newhaven. It will provide a much needed proposition to take outside of Newhaven of what is on offer, and importantly, what type of investment and growth we are seeking to attract that is right for Newhaven. It provides also a strong evidence base of demand, socially, culturally, economically, one that allows us to continue the conversation about how we're doing. This isn't a one-off exercise we've done, it's a conversation going forward that progress is actually being made, and it does take time. So without further ado, please let's get to the big reveal, the pillars of distinctiveness and the things that we need to focus on. We're not saying that these are fully in place, but they are at the heart of how we're going to grow and prosper. So today we will hear from 3 different speakers, each come with their own expertise, their experience and perspective of their sector, also importantly, their own experience of Newhaven. John Till from Thinking Place will bring in an external perspective of how a place story has led to success elsewhere in the country, but also relatively how he's found the Newhaven experience. Trevor Beattie will talk from his experience at the South Downs National Park, how the process has worked for them because they've been through a similar thing, but also his excitement at being part of Newhaven's story too. And lastly, I will bring us back together to talk about how we will do things differently, and a little like Monty Don, our jobs for the weekend, the Newhaven call to action. So my first introduction for today, there's no doubt that Newhaven is a hidden nook that has the opportunity to create fantastic spaces for creatives, with perhaps a hub for activity on Railway Quay or the disused buildings in the town centre itself. We've got spaces that are interesting, textural and intimate. Most importantly, we have an environment that's a creative person's dream. Newhaven has big skies, sea, cliffs, countryside where you can feel free. It's raw, rugged, wild, real, natural, but also gloriously industrial. And it is that disconnect that gives it that visual fascination. It truly is a place of contrasts. There's an energy, dynamism and passion within Newhaven that can be harnessed to bring new activity and life to our town. Along the coast is Brighton, which has a vibrant creative scene, but not everyone wants to be there. And for those seeking great value or an alternative vibe, Newhaven can be that place. We can attract those wanting to be early adopters, those seeking respite from the cities and just wanting something different. So it's my pleasure this morning to introduce Paula Besford. She's a creative director of Hello Flamingo, one of our latest companies to locate in Newhaven, and she will describe her experience of the creative sector and introduce the theme of valuing creative freedom. Can I hand over to Paula? Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. How are you all? I would just like to introduce myself. My name is Paula, and I'm the founder and creative director at Hello Flamingo, which I partner with my partner. So we founded the business together about nearly 6 years ago, and we recently relocated to Newhaven. We predominantly work in the retail sector. We're a design and manufacture company, so we do a lot of retail displays and window shops and pop-ups. And we were in Peacehaven, and we were looking to relocate at the end of our contract. And after a lot of looking around, we looked in Brighton, Shoreham, Newhaven. We felt that this was the best place for us. We had amazing support through Lewis Council and also through Locate East to help us with grants and funding and business supports and putting business plans together to help us realise what we could afford and the different areas that we could look at. So we came to Eastside and we just fell in love with it. It's such a great location. It's everything that we wanted. We're in a really big, lovely workshop, which has got so much space. We've got amazing neighbours already. The whole estate has kind of been focused more to creative people. And there's a real feel of community here on the estate, and it's now got another section which is being developed. So that I really love. One of the reasons why we picked Newhaven in particular is the facilities we have on our doorstep. You know, we've got big chain suppliers where we get all our building materials from, and then we've got smaller companies that we get our polystyrene from, powder coating, metalworking. So there's lots of industries in the area that we lean on and use as a support network to help our business run. And because they're just down the road, it's really easy. We can pop down, you know, get what we want, and it saves us a lot of time, and it's nice to support local companies like us who are manufacturing. And you know, we're not a massive company, but it's nice to be able to not just always give to the big guys. Another reason why we decided to choose here is because of the train line. So I go to London a lot for meetings, and it's quicker for me to get the train from Newhaven up to London than it was where I used to be, where I'd have to drive into Brighton, then get the train, then drive back. So the facilities here are great. We have a lot of freelancers who work for us, and they all predominantly get the bus or the train. So the you know, the facilities for travel is brilliant. What I really love about Newhaven is the fact that it is an industrial town, and it doesn't try to hide the fact that it's something it's not. It really enhances what it is, and I think that's a real beauty about it. It's, you know, it's really interesting to see this like hub of activity that's always going on, and it's, you know, it's great. On a personal level, what I really love about it here is I'm a dog walker, and my dog comes to work with us every day, and we have this beautiful countryside and sea on our doorstep. I get up, I go to every morning, I go onto the downs, and then I go down onto the beach, then I go into the nature reserve, and the nature reserve in itself has got all this industrial history to it, which is the, you know, it's got the World War I air bunkers down there, it's got the Chailey Hospital and the old tide mills. So that in itself is just really interesting to kind of be surrounded by, and then you've got all this nature and birds and sea and beautifulness, and it really helps my creativity, and kind of it just brings a real sense of positiveness to my day at work. And I also have a sea view when I'm in my desk, so that's really fantastic. I think anyone who was considering coming here should really do so. It's it seems to be, there's a real buzz about it at the minute, and there's a lot more new exciting things going on here, and there's a lot more building going on, and it's great to hear that there's money being invested into the high street, because I think that needs a bit of love, and I think it'll get it, and I think it'll introduce more people into the area. And I don't think, you know, being in Brighton's great, it's an amazing place, but one, it's ridiculously expensive. If you want a unit, you wouldn't get a unit this size, and I think here you get such good value for your money, and because it's an enterprise part, you get business rates relief, which is, again, that enabled us to rent a bigger premises, because we had the funding available for 5 years where we don't have to pay the business rates, and that's such an amazing help to be able to help our business expand like other businesses want to expand. As I say, I'm really passionate about it here. I live in Saltdean, so it's not very far. The other really good thing is I drive to work, and the commute is great because we aren't fighting the traffic. I drive to Newhaven, it takes me 15 minutes. I can turn around and drive home, and it takes me 55 minutes in the morning because the traffic is so heavy. So if you're looking to move out of Brighton, that's one of the positives, is getting to work. It's also, you know, the public transport. But if you're a driver, you save so much time getting home in the evenings or in the morning. So it's that's another string to add to this great bow of a wonderful place to be. It's yeah, it's quite fascinating to see it kind of come to life. I'm not from this area originally, but I've lived here for over 20 years, and to kind of see things happening here, it's really exciting. Thank you very much for your time, everybody, and yes, have a nice day. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, Paula. Totally unscripted and really passionate, and you're so much energy, and exactly the kind of company and employer that we're looking to attract to the area. So we're really delighted that you're here. So I move on to our second pillar. Newhaven is a place whose sense of being is intrinsically linked with marine and water. It has a rich maritime history. It has a strong fishing tradition and brings home the catch, which is sold at the local fish markets. It therefore has the potential to support a wider food and drink offer. Along with the outdoor activities linked to the coast, the River Ouse, the National Park and the Newhaven Dieppe Ferry, there is opportunity to use its location to build a strong marine influence leisure offer. As part of building a vibrant place and local economy, education can be so important in marine-related study through our partners at Seahaven Marine Academy, East Sussex College, National Maritime and others, and the potential role of the former UTC. Activity linked to green energy would be appropriate for Newhaven and give us a clear focus. Newhaven in recent times has turned its back on the water like many other towns, but perhaps the opportunity is to be bold and create a new marine-based centre which creates a heart and a focus for working, but also for living and leisure by the sea. So therefore, it's my pleasure to introduce Peter Green, Chief Executive of National Maritimer, our own cross-channel swimmer, and he will introduce the theme of Marine in the Making. Thank you, Peter.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Corinne, Graham, and Thinking Place for inviting me to participate in this morning's event. I think you said it all, Corinne. But so my name is Peter Green. I'm the CEO of National Maritime, the business engagement group for UK maritime SMEs, and the largest regional maritime network in London and the South East. We're based in Dartford, so we're in the South East. We support SMEs in the UK maritime sector through funding, expertise, and talent. We bring together members of the UK maritime sector from across engineering, ports and logistics, business services, heritage and social sciences, fisheries, shipping, offshore energy, superyacht and leisure. My aim this morning is to communicate in less than 6 minutes, that's always difficult for me, how local and regional maritime industries can help build the foundations that best support Newhaven's physical and sustainable economic growth potential, and how a shared vision to establish an internationally recognised maritime and sustainable technology centre driven by the maritime sector could help support Newhaven's transition from a low-value economy to a new and high-value one. A centre that would encourage those industries who are involved in providing environmental, engineering and maritime products and services to invest in Newhaven, and a centre that would become internationally recognised as a specialist centre of excellence in training for those industries. And of course, one that best supports Newhaven's enterprise zone, clean, green and marine ambitions. At this point, I think it's important to talk about a word about partnerships and regeneration. It's worth remembering that nobody is solely responsible for the regeneration of Newhaven. And regeneration means different things in different kinds of places. The success that we at National Maritime continue to enjoy with government, our members, and developing a successful maritime network is based to a large extent on collaboration, partnerships, goodwill and trust. We work in partnership to simplify the approach that best drives business and sector success. We are busy in working in partnerships to create places where maritime business matter. From our shared experience, it is important to recognise how collaboration and engagement between industry, stakeholders and the local community provides opportunities for the exchange of ideas and practices to stimulate an entrepreneurial environment, and also helps create a support network that will deliver the shared vision and good quality sustainable growth for Newhaven. The Newhaven Maritime Cluster has always been there, and it now supports a growing and diverse economy with emerging specialisms in innovative, high-value growth sectors, including offshore wind and marine energy. By seeking to work in partnership with local training providers such as Seahaven Maritime Academy, East Sussex College, and those in higher education industry, we will ensure that we can all deliver the marine in the making revolution for Newhaven, or a revolution. So we already know that Newhaven is located on the English Channel. It's at the coast of the River Ouse. It's a port town which has an active industrial and commercial river frontage. It's been a harbour for sea fishing vessels since the 16th century. So do you also know that Newhaven is part of the largest maritime cluster in the UK? That's London and the South East. It's home to over 4,000 businesses, employing 250,000 people, this is regional, and generates 5 billion of the UK's GDP. Its port constitutes part of the most versatile port cluster in the world, and it's home to the Dieppe cross-channel ferry and provides a shore base for offshore wind operations and commercial trades in aggregates and scrap metals. There's also a marina and an active commercial fishing fleet. And its rivers and coastlines have a vigorous economy based on natural advantage. It is already the place for researchers seeking and contributing to global knowledge in the arts and humanities and the sciences and the social sciences. And its manufacturing and advanced engineering sector is well placed to provide support service in the leisure, naval, commercial, offshore, renewable energy and other sectors. Its maritime cluster has by number more enterprises involved in fishing, 35 vessels. I think across Sussex there's over 400 vessels and 40 commercial angling vessels. Most of those are under 10 metres in size. And the port is also, Port of Newhaven is an important base for large offshore fishing vessels. They use the deep water moorings of the port as a temporary base. So the maritime opportunity, it's clear that Newhaven has an existing maritime cluster since the 16th century. And now it has a growing and diverse economy with emerging specialisms in innovative, high-value growth sectors. It offers substantial physical capacity for growth, and has the potential to develop an internationally recognised maritime and sustainable technology centre to help drive good quality sustainable economic growth for the town. Furthermore, we see the UK government maritime strategic ambitions aligned to 7 level themes, or 7 high-level themes. The UK's competitive advantage, environment, infrastructure, people, security, technology and trade, all of which creates further opportunities to help drive economic productivity for Newhaven. The maritime subsectors that we believe from our research that represent the best opportunity for driving change in Newhaven are advanced engineering, so that's marine engineering manufacturing, environmental technology and services, ports and logistics, commercial fishing. We're also having some future thinking around, also includes, our future thinking is all centred around establishing a National Centre for Marine Social Sciences, whose objective is to generate world-leading and innovative research, and the provision of a sea fishing school to support the fishing industry across the south of England. Currently, there's only one in the UK. By working together in partnership, National Maritime believes there's clearly an opportunity to support the people, places, and maritime industries and ambitions of Newhaven. Marine in the making, and what I'll say, respect the old, protect the young. Thank you all for your time. Back to you, Corinne.
Okay, thank you, Peter. That was fantastic, and I think a lot of you will be very excited by that, and there's a huge amount to digest and unpack, so we can't do that today, but there will be opportunities which I'll come to, so thank you, Peter. So moving on to the third pillar of distinctiveness. Newhaven is different. It is and always has been a working place, a place of industry, and that should be celebrated. In a part of the world dominated by countryside, this isn't a chocolate box location, even though it does have majestic scenery. But the area needs a place where things are made, where less sexy forms of commerce happens, and that is Newhaven. We do have a wide range of businesses, and the Newhaven Enterprise Zone was created to build on this activity and to generate growth. It has given business a voice and created a collaborative place-led coalition of the willing, keen to see the place prosper. Our excellent connectivity by road, rail and sea can only help with this endeavour, and through its partners, Newhaven needs to move from being a hidden gem to being seen as a real place of opportunity. I am thrilled to have Lucas Schoen with us today from Boutique Modern. Many of you know them locally, but some of you may have seen them featured on Grand Designs. They're a great example of how we should be celebrating the energy of industry. So I'd like to pass over to Lucas.
Thanks, Corinne. Morning, everyone. My name's Lucas Schoen. I'm Projects Director at Boutique Modern. We're a modular buildings company. We've been based in Newhaven for just over 8 years now. I think Paula said really well what the sort of individual benefits are of working in Newhaven. It's a fantastic place just to come to work and work day to day. But what do? We are a designer and modular manufacturer of housing, specialising in supplying local authorities and housing associations across the southeast. We were founded in 2010 and started off our business journey by building small private developments and small housing schemes for individual developers, and sort of started basically developing our build system through that. More recently, over the past 3 years or so, we have been providing local authority housing and social housing for housing associations, which we see very much as our future. So why did we set up in Newhaven? Our managing director, in fact, worked here for 20 years or so before he founded this company. And the reason we set up in Newhaven in the first instance, to be quite honest, was because space was affordable, it was cheap. We moved into an 8,000 square foot unit, which a couple of years later became 17,000 square feet, and then 23,000 square feet. And in 2018, we moved into the space we're in now, which is about 35,000 square feet with a factory and a tailored office space that fits exactly what we're looking to deliver. We've always grown to meet our sort of demand over our last 10 years, and we've had a lot of support from the council and from the enterprise zone and from Located Sussex in expanding to meet that demand. So we're a modular builder, a volumetric manufacturer, which means our houses leave the factory as 3-view structures. The floors and the walls and the roof are erected in the factory, the kitchens and bathrooms are fitted, they're decorated and second fixed and shipped all over the southeast. We have a fully accredited build system, a very high performance build system made of steel and SIPS panels, which is entirely assembled by hand, which means rather than machinery and large spaces, what we really need is people. And that's another fantastic reason why we set up in Newhaven. What we found working here is that we've got brilliant access, and we've developed really good working relationships with the East Sussex College Group and the Department of Work and Pensions and the Job Centre in Newhaven Town Centre to recruit the sort of entry-level jobs that we need to fill our factory. We've always concentrated on not hiring construction professionals, because what we do in principle is manufacturing. People with a background in construction tend to be harder to train than the people we're looking for. So people who come to us with an eagerness to learn, people who are willing to work and willing to sort of try and adapt and learn new skills, we find most useful for us, and we found Newhaven to be a fantastic source of those kinds of people. Throughout that, we've also started recruiting through roles in the office, and again with partnerships with the East Sussex College Group, we've started apprenticeship schemes for finance roles and architecture roles, which again we found fantastic sources of work. Paula touched on this, but the transport links are a huge sort of benefit to us in that sense. We have a number of people in our factory who have low access to work. We have 3 epileptics on staff who can't drive for health reasons, and the bus and the train links to us essentially make it possible for them to continue their careers and work in construction in our factory. So our plans for the future centre entirely around Newhaven. We've been established here for 8 years now, and all of our plans are to be centred around Newhaven going forward. We've got a very strong track record of delivery in the area, and particularly with Lewes District Council, and we're really excited that Homes England and the government are embracing modular building as a solution to the housing and skills shortage. We're forecast to build about 90 homes in the next 12 months across Newhaven and across the South East. Many of them are pilot schemes for new local authorities other than Lewes, but also pilot schemes for housing associations to pilot modular as a solution. We're still growing, and year after next we're expected to build about 130 homes, and we've got the pipeline to continue this growth. Right now we're finishing building a block of social apartments, 13 social apartments in Newhaven, about 300 yards from our factory door, which will be used entirely 100% for social housing, and are expected to run at about 70% reduction of the UKPM national average for electricity. All of those savings will be passed on to the resident. So we're 10 years old this year, and over the past 3 years, mainly due to the work we've been doing with Lewes District Council, we've established ourselves as one of the most advanced modular building companies in the South East. We very recently secured a BOPAS accreditation, and at the moment we're under audit for an ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 accreditations. We're even going through accreditation at the moment to become a B Corporation, which is a company, essentially a European accreditation, which publishes our commitment to environmental health and social health alongside our alignment with our commitment to profit and finance. And Boutique Modern are aiming to be the first modular building company in Europe with this accreditation. So our business model focuses entirely on the benefits of modular construction on a local scale, and focusing on quality and social value, and keeping social value in the community that we're based. And we see Newhaven as our hub for now, and certainly for the future, to carry on delivering training, career opportunities, and maximising opportunities to build truly sustainable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. I think our audience today will understand why we wanted Boutique Modern to talk to us about their experience in Newhaven and the kind of employer they are. And we're very fortunate to have them here with us, and would like more like you. So we've heard from our 3 speakers, our 3 pillars. So we arrive at the centre of our story and what it's all about. We've had these 3 pillars of distinctiveness outlined by our guests, but what is the big idea? The big idea is what the place is about and what it stands for and what matters. It's not a strapline, but it's the very thing that excites us, and I think that we've heard about today. It's an emotion for many of us that know Newhaven and believe in the place and its community, and it certainly gets under your skin. There's a really strong sense of community in Newhaven, but it has lacked confidence in its own identity. Many people talk about the poverty of aspiration that can sometimes overshadow what is good and positive about the place. So, okay, we're not Brighton or Lewes. We're not actually inside the national park, and bits of it aren't all that pretty, but so what? It has so much character and many characters in it. It's captivating, it has so many contrasts. Rather than being the odd one out in the region, it needs to love the fact that it has industry. We make things and people work here. I don't think I'm the only one that sees this in Newhaven, sees and believes its potential. And I've also stopped apologising now for the less nice bits. This piece of engagement with Thinking Place has really demonstrated this to me, that so many people feel the same way, but it's really difficult to communicate the essence. So what is it that's so exciting that we can now articulate the Newhaven story and just what it is that is so special about it? One of the most common descriptors when we asked people to describe Newhaven was that Newhaven is gritty, and that actually maybe that's in a great way, because something that is a bit uncomfortable can be embraced to form something valuable. The grit becomes the pearl. So with Newhaven, we're thriving by being the grit in the oyster. So what, some of you might say, this is quite ambitious, but I want you to hold that thought of the grittiness becoming the pearl while you listen to our next speaker. I would like to introduce you to John Till. He's the director at Thinking Place. I mentioned before that I met him whilst listening to him speaking at a conference as he told the stories of places and their successes. It is with pleasure that I introduce him to speak of those successes and how we can take our story and make it a success too, in our own unique ways that we've identified. So if I can hand over to John, and you can take it away.
Okay. Thanks, Corinne. It's an absolute privilege to be with you guys today. This has been an amazing journey. We're so excited that we've got to this point now where the story is actually coming to life. Thinking Place has been around for 14 years. We work with places to help them reimagine themselves through the eyes of their stakeholders. And we do that by creating a forward-looking story for the place. And you've heard that today. For us, there are places you work with and there are places you fall in love with. And Newhaven is absolutely, definitely the latter. The team have loved working in the place because it has got so much character. It is so interesting and so diverse. So I want to quickly talk about what's happening in places, to highlight what others are achieving, and to talk about what really matters in making this approach happen. And it is about this that you see on the slide. It's about giving a place purpose. And that means all the people in the place, the businesses in the place, because you can't rely on just one or two people doing this, okay? And your place is changing, and you know this because you see it, and coronavirus has accelerated some of the things that we see now in places. You know, it isn't just about retail anymore, it's about sharing space, it's about leisure, and having a local centre is so important now. We've all found that during the pandemic, and it is about meeting needs, but it's also about a place that you have fun in. It's about a place where you come together, and it's about a place now where you live in. So some of the things that centres were for are now coming back again. And it's important that the place offers an experience, and the creative element that you've heard about for Newhaven is just that experience. And most of all, and the bit that we've all felt, is it's important that the place is somewhere you feel comfortable in, happy in, and a place that you're actually proud to call home. Okay, I'm going to talk about just a few places so you can see what they've done very differently by using a story in this different approach. So Prescott, part of Knowsley, ex-watchmaking, town centre in decline, really in decline, some lovely heritage buildings, but opportunities around its links to Shakespeare, can you believe? An idea that it could be a food and drink centre with independence, and that's actually happening, okay? This is Shakespeare North, which is based in Prescott, which is now nearly well on the way to completion. It's an absolutely stunning building, but before it even started happening, you saw this new story coming to life with boutique restaurants, bars, wine bars, etc., in a place where you'd just seen decline. Okay. North Notts is surprisingly north of Nottingham. It is Worksop, Retford, and miles of trees and miles of fields. And I remember when we went round it, it was like, what is going to happen with this? What could we do with this? But it created a strong story. It brought people together. But the key bit, having got a story, having got a place leadership group and an ambassador program, how do you sustain that? Okay. And what they decided to do was use that basis that they've created of that leadership group and the ambassadors to go for the biggest business improvement district ever in England, based on the place shaping work that they'd done with us. And they got an 85% vote first time round, and they now have 3.2 million over 5 years. That's what I call sustainability of approach. Next, we're on to Burnley. Burnley, a place not too far away from me. You may have gathered from my dulcet tones that I am a Lancastrian. So we've got a post-industrial place here, struggling a bit. And one of the main problems it had, quite near to Manchester, but a certain beaching took out a very little bit of rail track, which basically meant it took an hour and a half by train to get to the centre of Manchester, and you could do that by bike faster. So what happened was they used the leadership group, they used that story to lobby, got 8.8 million, the track went back, halved the journey time, and you can imagine that is transformational for that place. Next one is Medway. So Medway is actually a collection of 5 towns. It doesn't even exist. They've created it as an area, but it is the largest conurbation when it comes together in the southeast outside London. They have used the brand and etc. in their story as a way of knitting it all together. Next one, please. And you can see here everything from the train station to the college is carrying that visual identity. And all that's trying to do is say, we are proud to be part of this place. And they're that proud that they are now bidding for UK City of Culture. Okay. And then to Coventry. We've had a long-standing relationship with Coventry. When we started there, we asked various fund managers and investors in London what they thought about Coventry. And we got glitz, bombing, concrete, Lady Godiva, and we used to make cars. Not exactly a great starting point to try and build a 21st century economy in a major city, but with a story and with bringing together a powerful group of leaders and ambassadors, we got to this, where Coventry not only bid for City of Culture, they won the bid. And 8 years ago, if I'd have suggested to them they could do that, they'd have been rolling around the floor laughing. Okay. And it comes to Newhaven. You know, what a brilliant place. What a magical place. And what an opportunity to make some place magic. Everyone wants to measure everything. I understand that return on investment is important, inward investment, number of visitors, etc. But all this work is about creating the environment for success. You've just seen that in those examples, doing things differently. Next one. So let's look at creating that. The story is about giving confidence to the place so that everybody has a shared sense of clear direction of what the place is trying to achieve. Okay. It's about widening leadership, and you've already heard from some people who are place leaders, and there is role and room for everyone to be a place leader, and you've got a fantastic group in Newhaven. Okay. It's about collaboration, and you're going to hear from Corinne later on about how that can happen and what's going to happen. But you guys have to come together. This is about you doing it as well. Don't just sit back and wait for others. You can help put Newhaven on the map, okay? It's about authenticity. It's about being real. And if ever there was a real place, Newhaven is a real place. It ain't flowers round the door, but it's still beautiful in so many ways, okay? And all of this really is about inspiration and perspiration. We've got lots of inspiration. We've heard from some inspirational people. I know there are lots more of you out there, but it will be hard work. You know, you've got to be in it for the long haul. And finally, I guess what I would say is this. As a place, you have some wonderful assets, some wonderful opportunities. Be thankful for what you've got, because you'll end up having a lot more. If it's all about what you don't have, you'll never have enough, guys, never have enough. And you have an absolute majesty of things and positivity going for you. I really wish you all the best on this journey. It's been a fantastic project. And it's now my pleasure and privilege to introduce Trevor Beattie, the Chief Executive of South Downs National Park, a piece of work we did a few years ago, which we are hugely proud of as a team. And I know you're going to be really interested in what Trevor's going to say.
Thank you very much indeed, John. Good morning, everyone. And I'm very pleased to be able to share with you the experience here of the South Downs. As John said, I'm the Chief Executive of the South Downs National Park Authority. It's 1,600 square kilometres of the busy southeast. It surrounds Newhaven, and I want to say a bit more about that. I think Newhaven is integral to the national park. And above all, I think the national park, you need to know two things. One, that it's the most populous and busy national park in the country, and two, that it's the best. As long as you've got those two things, that's the national park. I want to start by talking about the work that the national park did with Thinking Place to create our identity, which is an identity for the whole national park, for everyone in it. And then I want to talk a bit about the relationship between Newhaven and the national park itself. So first of all, identity. And as we've heard, Newhaven has so much to build on in creating that sense of identity. And for me, identity is about place and community interacting together. And so when building an identity, it's really important to start with the story. Don't start with the images, don't start with the graphics, don't start with where you want to end up. Start with where you are and the story of the place. I can't imagine a place, as we've heard this morning, with a greater, more complex and more gritty story than Newhaven. What a great place to start. And that's what we did in the South Downs National Park. It wasn't about the imagery. We started with the story, the treatment, and we listened to what people said. And we asked them, what makes this South Downs National Park? And we got quite a complex story from which we extracted four key things. Firstly, it's a living landscape. Secondly, it's human by nature, nature and community together. Thirdly, it's about connecting experiences. It's all about the interactions between those experiences. And fourthly, it's a story of Englishness. It's something integral to the character, to the national character. And first slide, please, Rose. Building on that, we started to develop the imagery. And here you'll see what we came up with. But this was the end of the process, not the beginning. These are actually, on the screen, you'll see our shared identity, which is a series of real profiles, real horizon lines from the national park. There's Butser Hill there in the west, and you can see in the east there's Seven Sisters, the cliffs of Seven Sisters. And we produced that identity in a way that could be very flexibly used. It can be knocked right back to a watermark. You'll see that at the bottom. It can be monotone, or it could be quite vivid. Next, please. And it's much more than a logo. I mentioned the complexity of our story. And so we wanted something that could be used by the whole national park. This isn't something that is about the planning authority. The planning authority has a different logo altogether. This is something that everyone in and working with the national park can use and work with. And so it's able to be completed with a series of different textures. And you might be able to pick out there's a coastal version, there's a town version, there's a village version, there's a heathland version and a chalk version, a woodland version and a farmland version. So we wanted something adaptable that got across the complexity of that story, but was very easily and widely capable of being used. Next, please. And here's an example of the identity in practice. Some of you will have seen the new signs that are going up. This is the only landscape sensitive signage in the country. There's 11 different versions of this signs. In the wooded areas, they're wooden. In the open areas, they're core 10 steel to reflect the industrial heritage. There's hybrid versions. There's long, low versions for open fields and taller versions for villages. Next, please. And we wanted the identity to be picked up and used by as many people as possible. We don't license this. If you want to use it, you simply have to sign up to the National Park's purposes and identity. And having done that, you could use it. And here's some examples. Winchester City Mill, the National Trust use the shared identity there at the bottom. If you can get the National Trust to use your identity, you have succeeded. They are very, very jealous of their brand and identity. You'll see there some signage around Brighton and some leaflets using the National Park. I could have given you many more examples. I think my favourite one is a brewery, Langham's Brewery in West Sussex. Put the shared identity on the neck of their beer bottles and contributed 5p for each bottle sold to the National Park Trust. This identity business is about building economic value. That's a very small example. We've heard from some thriving businesses in Newhaven that I believe could greatly benefit from the economic value that this identity will create. So I want to say a bit about the National Park. That is, if you like, our story. And by the way, this development of the identity, we're still working on this. This is a long process. It took us a good year to develop the identity, building on the story and producing something that had wide buy-in. And we are still working it through and discovering its potential. It's a process, not a one-off exercise. So I want to say now a bit about the relationship between Newhaven and the National Park. Next slide, please. In the green, you can see the National Park, and you can see how closely the boundary of the National Park sits around Newhaven. That, I think, is a great asset for the National Park and for Newhaven. And for me, one of the issues that I think that Newhaven can build on is this. It's always been a very flexible and integrated place with the landscape, and it's always responded, the development of Newhaven has responded to the landscape. You cannot separate the history of the landscape around Newhaven with the history of Newhaven. For instance, many of you know that before the 16th century, the mouth of the Ouse was at Seaford, and then in the mid 16th century, the Newhaven was created, the new cut was created to create Newhaven with its direct access. And then over time, that drifted east due to silting, to storms, to tide mills. And then in 1733, the definitive cut was produced and it was brought back. In other words, the river mouth has ebbed and flowed, and Newhaven has ebbed and flowed with the landscape. The same is true of the downland landscape that surrounds it. The connections are so important. Next slide, please. Here's a few physical examples. This is the Egrets Way, which the National Park Authority has been working on. The last phase, we've actually just raised the funding for the last phase of this connection from Newhaven into Lewes. So you'll have an off-road cycle track and walkway along the river to Lewes. And I think this sort of physical connection is really important alongside the landscape connection. Next slide, please. Here's Tide Mills. It's been mentioned several times, but it allows me to pick up another point I want to make, which I tend to speak in landscape terms, but actually we've heard today some of the most important connections are cultural, community, identity, the people and landscape together. And again, Tide Mills is just a jewel which I'd like people to see more about as a lesson of people interacting with landscape and the changing landscape. And I hope some of the shared identity, some of the story which is going to be developed for you, with you by Thinking Place, will pick up this fluidity, this link between people, place and landscape. And can I say, just from my point of view in the National Park Authority, we are working up have developed a strategy for the whole heritage coast, from Newhaven through Seven Sisters, Burling Gap, Beachy Head to Eastbourne. Newhaven is one side of this, a pivot sitting at the Heritage Coast, a link into the National Park and through the National Park into the Heritage Coast. And I hope that as you develop your place story and as you develop this identity for Newhaven, we can work with you, and the National Park will be a resource for you. And at the same time, you will enrich our identity and help us to continue to develop that identity. So thank you for the chance to speak, John. I look forward very much to this forward process and to what we're going to produce together.
Thank you, Trevor. I mean, my goodness, whenever I listen to people speak, and also particularly seeing, you know, and you see it all around us now when you drive through and around the national park, you know, how the story can be translated like that is so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I hope that you were all excited already about Newhaven, which is why you joined us today, but that today has also amplified that excitement and emboldened it by giving it a voice with the narrative that's been developed and a way in which to explain it to others, what it is that we're talking about. So importantly, it's what we do now. And I think Trevor explains quite well that it's not something that's just going to happen overnight. This is a journey we're on together, and it requires place leadership from all of those here today and others that we work with. I hope that what you've heard today does reflect and echo many of your own contributions to this process as well. It is ambitious, so we do need to take a different approach. So, you know, things won't change if we just keep doing things the way we already have. And we do really need to work collaboratively and not just talk about that in how we get this out there and how we change how we do things, how we change perceptions and mindset about Newhaven of the people who live here, work here, visit here, and never have even been here. And I think with the pandemic, the ability for people to change their mindset has been quite interesting, and people have been much more responsive and adaptive than perhaps we'd imagined in terms of pace of change. Our job as the EZ board, which is representative of many organisations and businesses, has been to bring the story together with you as our partners and stakeholders, but also our job has been to give the tools to help bring the story to life, because these things don't just happen on their own, but it is very much a collective effort going forward. We have started to bring together a place marketing plan. So looking at the narrative, a place plan that suggests a number of ways in which we can do that as the EZ, but say also as partners. We've already begun to use the narrative and to do things differently. So the recent bid to government for future high streets funding had the Newhaven story at the front and centre of the bid. It demonstrated this shared view of Newhaven and how therefore the funds could help bring this to life. And the same will be done for the other funding bids. So government will continually see the same message, the same advocacy and lobbying about what the Newhaven story is and what we need to do to really bring that opportunity about. Newhaven was recently invited and we participated in a national webinar around COVID and recovery. But what we were able to do with the narrative was to really shine a very positive light on what we're doing. And I hope, judging from the feedback I got, start to shine a different light on Newhaven and also make people aware of Newhaven. We've also begun to take the narrative and to develop a visual language that can be used. So as Trevor again mentioned, this isn't something that just happens straight away. The narrative comes first, and then from that comes the visual. So COVID did delay us, but we've now been out on site and we've taken a wonderful array of photographic images of people and places that really demonstrate and capture the pillars and the story that we've set out today. And also design will start to follow that as well. We have begun, but there is more to do that reflects and interprets that story. This will come together in a beautiful storybook that we can share widely, and you will all receive copies of that. I'll talk about that. But we're also developing a toolkit for use by all. So as Trevor referenced, this isn't ours to own as the EZ, it's the town's, it's the place. So developing tools that enable you to use that, interrogate it as appropriate is important. One of the first things we'll be doing is launching the Newhaven Champions Network. This is for our place leaders, yourself as place leaders. It's a bi-monthly opportunity to come together and sell and tell the Newhaven story. So we'll have high quality presentations and speakers, and you'll get more information about that. The first one will be on the 24th of September. I didn't want to delay and lose momentum any further. How we will deliver that at present, we're not sure if it'll be virtual or in person, depending on the rules. So that's exciting. Then we'll also say, I mentioned the tools, so we'll be making sure that you or your organisation can easily be on message with Newhaven. So we'll be running masterclasses for you, your colleagues, that allow you to quickly understand the narrative and the visual language, how to use the toolkit to support you in ways that are appropriate and importantly beneficial to your organisation as well in terms of place. So this might be through social media channels, communications, signage, a number of different ways that you might feel this could be useful and how we promote Newhaven. So I could talk at length about many of the things that we can do. I would prefer to be standing here with a physical thing to wave at you, but you know, I'm not, I'm in my front room. Many of you have shared with me already what you're doing and more that can be done together. So the place plan will very much bring those inputs in. If you have contributions to make, please let me know. And I can't wait to see what creativity comes from this. From signing up today, you will receive your own personal copy of the Newhaven storybook. It's going to be a very beautiful, book. You'll receive it in the next couple of weeks. It's not quite finished yet, but I think you'll see how well it reflects the people and place we've been talking about and the pearl that it really is. So really my kind of call to action is it's over to you to get the message out there with some help from us and spread the word about Newhaven. We need to change hearts and minds of those who aren't already having it under their skin. Please get involved, ask questions. We need to work together for our place, because I think Newhaven deserves it. And to be really that town and to be proud of being the grit in the oyster. So thank you for joining us today. I really wish it could have been in person and truly hope that I've infected you all with enthusiasm if you didn't have enough already. Sincerely, many thanks for joining us. I'll hand back to Graham to say goodbyes and thank yous. Thank you for everyone.
Thank you, Corinne, and thank you everybody who's spoken with such passion and interest. I hope you all enjoyed hearing the Newhaven story. Now we need to build on that story and create a pearl necklace from our grit. We need to work together to build on our assets, both human, physical and cultural. We need to drive forward recovery from COVID-19, of course. But we all need to speak and think positively about Newhaven and grasp this terrific opportunity to move the town forward. There are many prizes for health and happiness, the well-being and prosperity of people of this town. But they can only be fully realised if we work together in partnership and speak positively with one voice. To borrow a phrase, now is the time to unleash Newhaven. Thank you all for coming, thank you for your time, and thank you for what you will be doing for Newhaven in the future. Goodbye.